Hi friends, welcome to this tutorial for the Harvest Stitch Crochet Baby Blanket pattern. This pattern is an easy one row repeat with phenomenal texture. It's a bit airy and lacy, so it's a really nice between seasons baby blanket, and it's got a thick single crocheted border to frame it out. So all we need to do for this video tutorial today is grab a hook and yarn. I'm using Furls yarn today, Furls Wander. They provided the yarn and the hook for this pattern because it is part of their 2025 Furls blog hop. So this is Wander in the color Thatch, and then I've got one of the Furls Streamline metal hooks. It's an H5mm hook. So to get started, we are going to chain any multiple of 7 plus 3. So I am going to chain 17. So 7 plus 7 plus 3, 17. So go ahead and get 17 loops on your hook. Golly, slowly but surely. All right. Row 1, we're going to single crochet in the second chain from our hook and in each stitch across. I always like to go into the back bump because it produces a really clean edge, which makes it easier for us to work our border later. So if I bring this closer, here's our V's that are facing us. If you turn the work towards you, you can see these back bumps on the chain stitches. So the very first back bump is kind of hidden under the yarn tail there. It's this one. We're going to go into the second back bump, the second chain from the hook. So simply insert your hook, yarn over and pull up that loop and pull through 2. I'm assuming you probably already know how to do a single crochet if you're watching this video and you want to tackle this textural baby blanket project, but that was a real quick overview in case you're a beginner and you're just here to see what crochet is all about. So we're going to go ahead and work to the end. If folks have been subscribed to my channel or seen some of my previous videos, this is the same yarn I use in the men's crochet shawl for charity. It's much more dense than a lot of like budget acrylics on the market. It's 100% acrylic yarn, and I mean, I wouldn't call this an expensive acrylic. It's also a very good value, but it is denser, it's weightier than some of the ultra budget acrylics, which feels really nice. It just feels so cozy for something like a shawl or a baby blanket. All right. I made that first stitch real tight. Okay, so now we should end up with 16 single crochets because we had our chain of 17, but then we worked into the second stitch from the hook and across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Fabulous. Chain 1 and turn. Now, row 2 is our first like beautiful textural row of the pattern. So what you'll do is you'll double crochet in the first 2 stitches. Again, for anybody who needs a refresh, you'll yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. There's your double crochet. We're going to double crochet in those first 2 stitches. Now we are going to skip 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and we are going to work puff, chain 2, puff in this next stitch. So to make our puff stitch, yarn over, insert your hook in the designated stitch, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, insert your hook again in the same stitch, pull up a loop. You'll have 5 loops on your hook, yarn over, insert your hook in that same stitch again, and pull up a loop. You'll have 7 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through the first 6, which are conveniently kind of separate from that first loop on the hook. So yarn over and pull through the first 6, yarn over and pull through the last 2. There is your first puff stitch. Chain 2. Let's work another one. So yarn over and again into that same space where this first stitch, puff stitch, was worked. Insert your hook, pull up, whoop, pull up a loop. 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, insert your hook again, pull up another loop, 5 loops on your hook, yarn over, insert your hook again, pull up a loop, 7 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through the first 6, yarn over and pull through the last 2. That is our first harvest stitch. All right, let's skip 2 stitches again and then double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And you're going to repeat that across. So double crochet in those 2, skip 2 stitches, and we're going to make another harvest stitch. So right here, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert again, pull up the loop, 5 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, 7 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through the first 6. Ooh, I'm wrestling with it this time, but I got it. I think I might have split a stitch somewhere, but I'm gonna move on and not redo it for the interest of time. Yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. Chain 2. Make another puff stitch in that same spot. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert, pull up, 5 loops on the hook, yarn over, whoop, trying to go too fast, insert, pull up a loop, 7 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through the first 6, yarn over and pull through the last 2. Now we're going to skip 2, and in the last 2 stitches we're double crocheting. All right. And then we're going to chain 1 and turn. Doing a chain 1 at the start of double crochet height rows is a little unconventional. Usually you would do a chain 2 if it doesn't count as a stitch, or a chain 3 if it does count as a stitch. I like a chain 1 because I never am confused where to insert my hook or where the last stitch of my row is, and I have found it doesn't make my edges pucker or anything. So that's a personal preference. If you would rather do a chain 2 for your turning chain, feel free. We never work into the turning chain. All right, now for row 3, it is almost a repeat of row 2, except we're working our puff or our harvest stitches into these chain 2 spaces. So go ahead, double crochet in your first 2 stitches of the row. Now we're going to work our harvest stitch in the chain 2 space, which should be super easy to identify. And from here on out, you shouldn't really have to do any counting, because it should be really clear you're more or less double crocheting into double crochets and harvest stitching into the chain 2 spaces. I shouldn't have even said more or less. That is what you're doing. Double crocheting into double crochets. Harvest stitching into harvest stitches. So once I get to the end of this row, we'll kind of lay it out and see how the pattern is coming along so far. Whoops. If I don't split my stitches because I'm trying to go too fast. Yeah, I love that you can get such a textural pattern, a pattern that looks pretty intricate, but once you master this special stitch, it's just a 1 row repeat pattern, and it's quite mindless, which I love. It's nice to be able to just pick up and put down a project and not even have to consult the pattern until your border, really. And even then, once you do your border, once you do that first round of the border, it's also pretty mindless, but we'll get to that. So you can see already some of this gorgeous texture showing, and it'll flatten out a bit more as we continue to stitch. I am going to work up a few more rows just to give us a nice sized swatch to look at, and then we are going to work on the border. Behold our lovely harvest stitch swatch. So if I hold this up, you can, oh my goodness, look at those stitches. I'm such a fan of harvest stitches. I just think they're so pretty. I've used them in a couple patterns. I've got plans for using them in more. Now you can see, if I take my hands out from behind it, you can see this white background showing through the stitches. So again, it is a lacier stitch. Some folks don't like that, a lot of different reasons. You know, my husband, for example, is against a holy blanket. That's how he words it. But again, I think it makes it good for between seasons. There's also some concern about like babies sticking their fingers through the holes, but there are two camps. There are two schools of thought. On one hand, like, heaven forbid the blanket like rides up on the baby's face. They can still breathe if there's holes in it. Also, like, there's filet crochet patterns out there that use holes, or that literally use holes in the design, and they're very popular. On the other hand, a solid blanket, you're less likely for little babies to get their fingers stuck in the holes, and there's, I guess, concerns about circulation being cut off. Consult the experts on those things. That's my 2 cents on those topics as you consider whether or not you'd like to work this pattern up as a baby blanket. All right, let's go ahead and get started on the single crochet border. So I'm going to go ahead, chain 1 and turn. In our first stitch across the top, we are going to place 2 single crochets. We're going to place a marker on that very first one. That is going to become our corner stitch as we work around. Working 2 single crochets in the first stitch and then coming around and placing a third here at the end of the round keeps the seam in the corner, which is a personal preference of mine, because I have definitely in the past accidentally increased as say I started in the middle of a side of the blanket or something. I have definitely accidentally increased because I wasn't quite sure where I started or stopped, and then I had some bulk wherever my start or stop of the round was, so I prefer to keep my seam in the corner, then I always know where I'm at. All right, you're going to single crochet in each stitch across. What that means is you're going to go in the top of your double crochets, the top of your puff stitches, and then in your chain 2 spaces, you can either work right into the chain and do your single crochets that way, and then continue along, or you can simply place 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. So here's another chain 2 space. So you could just go right into the chain 2 space and place 2 single crochets. If I hold it up, there's not that much of a difference in the way it looks. You've got a slightly bigger hole here, but it kind of matches the holes in the rest of the harvest stitches. Compared to right here, it's a little bit more subdued. So that is up to you. Either way, you will get the correct number of stitches as you work across. When you get to your corner, work 3 single crochets and place a marker in that middle single crochet. So there's my 3. Those 3 single crochets. There's the middle one. Then there is no guesswork for where your corner is as you come back around. As you work along the sides, aim to place 2 single crochets for each row end. That's pretty standard for double crochet height rows, placing 2 single crochets along each row end for a border that should lie flatly. So because I worked 4 rows of harvest stitch and then I had 1 row of single crochet to start, I'm aiming for 9-ish single crochets, not including your marked corners along the sides. And again, when you get to the corner, 3 single crochets, place a marker in the middle single crochet. So there, I just worked 2 so far. Here's my 3rd in the same corner. Now, working along the bottom, this is a mystical, fiddly math thing when it comes to this stitch. We actually decreased after row 1, so this is 16 stitches. This, I believe, is 14. I'll double count real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Woohoo! Okay. Basically, you lose 1 stitch for every column of harvest stitches, and that's just how it shakes out. Well, we want the top and bottom stitch counts to match for this first round of the border for it to lie flatly. Otherwise, we're going to have some ruffling here because we'll have extra stitches. That's even more pronounced on a larger blanket. And it just won't be as pretty. How do we handle that? Well, we are going to work some single crochet 2-togethers. If you have not decreased before in crochet because you just work rectangles, aka baby blankets, like me, that's all I like to make are rectangles pretty much. Don't worry, it's pretty easy to single crochet 2 together. And where we are going to place our decreases is near these harvest stitch columns so that we remember where the decreases happen instead of trying to remember, oh, I need to do 2 single crochet decreases throughout the swatch or 18 single crochet decreases along the baby blanket. If you just aim to do a decrease for each column, then you'll get the right number. So we did 1 stitch. Let's do a couple single crochets until we get close to the bottom of our harvest stitch. Remember how we worked into the back bumps of the chain in round 1? Look how pretty that edge is, and it looks like you're working into the top of stitches like a normal pattern. So it's a little tighter just from the nature of the chain than working into the top of our stitches over here, but it's a lot easier to work into, in my opinion, than if you work into the V's of the starting chain. It just looks different and then it's a little more confusing. All right, here's the bottom of our harvest stitch. Here's where we're going to do our first single crochet 2 together. So begin in this first stitch as though you're working a normal single crochet. So get your 2 loops on the hook. Now pretend you're going to make another single crochet in this next stitch without finishing this one. So insert your hook and pull up a loop in the next stitch. Now we have 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. And that actually looks very similar to the single crochet next to it, a little wider because there is an extra loop there, but it looks very similar. It avoids a gap because you could technically just skip a stitch, and that's fine, especially for my beginner friends. You are totally welcome to just skip a stitch, but it makes it a little more seamless if you work the decrease. All right, go ahead and single crochet across the rest of the bottom. When we get to the bottom of the next harvest stitch column, I will demonstrate the single crochet 2 together again. All right. So again, the way the single crochet 2 together works, another way to think of it is it's like you're starting 2 single crochets and then finishing 1. Maybe that's more confusing now that I'm saying that out loud, but maybe it's helpful, I don't know. So just begin your first single crochet, get the 2 loops on the hook. Instead of finishing the single crochet by yarning over and drawing through, insert again into the next stitch, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. All right, and here we're approaching the corner. Sorry if you can hear the stitch marker sound with it dragging against the bottom here. I trying to pull the swatch a little higher so that you don't hear that it's not like a grating sound. 3 single crochets in the corner again. Place a marker in the middle one. Before working that 3rd stitch. All right, and then once again on this final side, single crochet, aim to place 2 single crochets per row, so that in this swatch you'll roughly end up with 9 because, well, we had the first row that was just single crochet, so just place 1 single crochet along that row, and then aim to place about 2 single crochets for every other row after that. We are back at the start. You are going to single crochet in that same spot where the first 2 were done before. We're back. So that adds up to 3 single crochets in that first stitch. Slip stitch join to the first marked stitch of the round. All right, so there's round 1 of our border. Then from there on, you're going to just single crochet around. I worked mine in continuous rounds, which over time tends to give you kind of like slanty corners. Anybody who's watching who's done granny squares, sometimes you get the like granny tilt. This can happen just doing single crochet in continuous, well, they're joined rounds, not continuous rounds. Right side facing rounds. That can happen where it's a little tilted, it's not perfect, crisp, 90-degree angle corners. To combat this, you can turn each round. I didn't for this pattern. I embraced the tilt, but you are welcome to turn each round so that you end up correcting that effect. So that's just a tip. To do the next round, to get the next round started, we just joined, chain 1, and then in this corner we slip stitched into, place 2 single crochets. And you're gonna mark, oops, sorry, my hands went off camera a bit there. We're gonna move the marker to the first single crochet of the round. Again, working 2 in the corner and then a final 1 in the corner when you come around keeps our seam in the corner so you know where you're at. Every other corner you're going to just work your 3 single crochets and continue around. And then you just simply single crochet across, placing 3 single crochets in each corner and marking the middle corner. So there's no guesswork for where your corners are. You don't have to worry about super wonky corners because you thought that was the corner each round and then turns out it wasn't because you were guessing. using stitch markers just makes the whole crocheting process, especially with borders, more mindless. You do not have to worry, oh shoot, was that the right stitch for the corner or not? Because it's marked. I had a phase when I was a newer crocheter thinking that stitch markers were only for newbies, and I thought I was above that. And it didn't end well with certain projects. And in fact, the Marley Bird is where I really learned this from and embraced it. Like, stitch markers it's not cheating. They are a fabulous tool. And you see them used all the time in very advanced patterns, crochet and knitting alike, probably Tunisian, like all sorts of fiber arts. And so embrace stitch markers, they're fabulous. I love the silicone ones because I tend to break the plastic ones. I don't know, I guess I'm a little too forceful or something, but I love the silicone ones. I have yet to break one, and use them all the time. All right, I'm going to continue this round. I'll meet you at the start so we can get a look at how the border's coming along and get a glimpse at what your completed blanket will look like. All right, here I am near the end of this round, and I have one more tip to share with you before we go, which is that if you look at this stitch, it looks like there's one more stitch here, but see how it's not really directly on top of anything? I am pretty sure that is the slip stitch that joined our round last round. Now, we're going to work our final single crochet here. If you really want to take the guesswork out, because I hesitated coming back here, I was like, wait, is that the slip stitch or not? Add another stitch marker to mark your final stitch of the round, that last stitch in this corner, so that you know, okay, this is the last, when you come back around later, this is the last stitch of the round, and now I'm going to slip stitch join. Or next round, this is the last stitch of the round, then I'm going to work in my corner. So go ahead and slip stitch join. I'm going to do one more round to show you what I mean, because again, this is I don't know if I've made it obvious as I talk about stitch markers and borders that borders have been a pain point for me in crochet, and so I'm very I really want to make sure you guys work your borders correctly without some of the frustrations I had with accidentally increasing because I accidentally worked into that slip stitch, or I didn't use stitch markers, or I started in the middle of a side and same problem, accidentally increased somehow and ended up with some bulk. So I'll go around and I will show you what this looks like when we get back to it. Okay, so I've worked up until my marked stitch, and I just want to show again how helpful stitch markers are. So this is my last stitch of the last round. Now I know I'll work a stitch here, then I still need to add a stitch in this corner because I just have the 2 stitches in the corner. So I'm not working into this stitch here, which looks like a stitch you might work into. It looks kind of the same as these 2 stitches flanking it. But if I worked a stitch here and then went into the corner, I would be increasing and end up with some bulk. So you can take out the stitch marker and work into that place. Work into your corner to get that 3rd single crochet in the corner. That is where I would mark the stitch again. And go ahead and slip stitch join. Let's lay it out. Oh, I just can't get enough of this texture. I absolutely love this stitch. I hope if this stitch is new to you that you love it too, and If not, I hope you at least enjoyed the video tutorial. If you would like more video tutorials of crochet baby blanket patterns that are memorizable, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Like this video if you enjoyed it so that other folks can see it. And by the way, I should have said this at the start of the video, all of the pattern details for this baby blanket are on my blog, dananeal.com, and the direct link to the pattern is in the description, as well as Etsy and Ravelry links if you are interested in purchasing the ads-free PDF. All right, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoy making this pattern and have a wonderful rest of your day.